Dear friends, dear colleagues, dear participants, thank you very much for coming today. My name is Yulia Fil. I'm from the Institute of Oriental Studies. Please mute your microphones if possible. Who still didn't do it, thank you. Thank you very much. And the topic for our today's discussion is very important. It's Ukraine-Russian war. The full topic sounds like its character and geopolitical consequences. And it's quite weird to talk about the character and the nature of this war when war waged almost 3 years now. But we Ukrainians here, we encounter with the situation when it's lack of understanding of the very nature of this war in the world. That's why we tireless to explain our position in the world, to deliver our vision, our view from inside on this war. So we are very thankful to our Indian partners from Synergia Foundation to support our initiative, to their curiosity to listen to us and to have this talk, to have this sincere communication about the war. The regulations will be very strict today because we don't have much time. So firstly, we will have the Ukrainian, so-called Ukrainian session. We will listen to Ukrainian speakers. I will give from 7 till 10 minutes to Ukrainian speakers. And then I will introduce you with the Indian colleagues, and we will start the Q&A session. Okay? And without any further introductions, I want to introduce you Dr. Olena Bordilovska from the National Institute for Strategic Studies. She will make the introductory remarks and will give us the frame for our further discussion. Please, Dr. Olena, the stage is yours. We don't hear you.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, now it's okay. Yeah.
Now it's okay. Thank you. So good morning and good afternoon to our Indian participants, dear colleagues. I'm very happy to have you today, as this event was very much anticipated. And let us be very open today in sharing our thoughts and estimations, which are really important, I believe. Many thanks to our colleagues from Synergy for co-organizing this event. The main idea of this webinar is to bring Ukrainian attitude to our Indian colleagues, academics and publics, and to share our vision on what happened in February 2022 and even earlier in February 2014. As one of the authors of the idea of this webinar and the promoter of India-Ukraine collaboration and understanding, I'd like to give this discussion some clear impulses by sharing important facts which we believe are of crucial importance. So the main purpose, as I said, of this conversation is to explain the real reasons and motives of Russian Federation providing this full-scale war against Ukraine, not Ukrainian crisis and not Ukrainian conflict. It's a full-scale invasion we experience. But we know that the estimation of this war is still very different, and we are aware of a so-called neutral attitude, which is very popular in India, and we know that neutrality is the way of international conduct, could be the best tool for defense the national interests of the country. But in case of Russia-Ukraine war estimation, it is still our concern And as it was mentioned by our president, Volodymyr Zelensky, in first ever interview to Times of India recently, um, when there is neutrality as a common conduct, it's okay. But in case of the aggression, there could not be neutrality between the aggressor and victim. We understand, because it looks like you are on the side of aggressor. But let's be very frankly, as I said, we are very open in this discussion. Pro-Russian estimations are very high in the so-called global south and in India, which is almost approved to be the voice of global south. We know that, and we have to combat this approach to destroy the myth of Russian propaganda. And that's why let me start with very simple facts. The first point is that Ukraine never planned this war. We never wanted this war.
I'm sorry,
Machine.
Dr. Olena,
Yeah.
the sound is bad. Um,
Just a
Something
second.
wrong with your microphone. Yeah, can we
Sorry, yes, we will check.
quickly check it at least?
Is it okay?
For
Now,
now,
is it
yes.
okay?
Yes,
Better?
yes, please. Yes,
Okay,
thank you
thank you.
very
So
much.
let me just share some important facts with you. And the first point is that Ukraine never planned this war. We never wanted this war. We know which neighbor we have a nuclear status and huge military machine. We know that, and we were seeking the ways for negotiating since 2014. But it was not successful, unfortunately. As we never planned this war, we can't share the same responsibility for this war. The point number two is that Ukraine never intervened any country. We were absolutely happy within our international recognized borders, and we never violated international law. Just opposite, Russia violated almost every document, starting with the United Nations Charter and the Great Agreement between Russia and Ukraine of 1997. Fact number three is that this war for us is of existential character. This is the war for our independence, and we clearly share this view. At the time of Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi's visit to Kyiv in August, with Indian media and also the members of the delegation, of Indian delegation. So we can't stop the fighting, because there will be no us, there will be no independent Ukraine. And it is exactly the main purpose of Putin's regime to destroy our country, our economy, to kill our people, and to vanish the spirit of Ukrainian culture. Still, fact number four is that all wars come to an end, and so will Russia's war against Ukraine and Ukrainians. And you know that on G20 summit in Bali 2022, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, presented a so-called peace formula, 10 points plan, how to reach the long-lasting peace. Yes, it is very difficult to implement, and that's why we are seeking for some moderation and some support internationally, but still there is our vision how to get justice and to win this war. And fact number five is that if Ukraine wins, the international law will be restored as well, and Russia could be stopped on providing revisionist, disrupting activity throughout the world, and also the role of Ukraine as a food security grantor will be preserved, because even now, Ukraine, state at war, is in the list of top 10 biggest exporters of grain and food throughout the world. To win this war, we have to win the hearts and minds throughout the world. And that's why, again, we have this event today. And I hope for your intention to understand better what is going on in my country today. And we have really to destroy many myths created by Russian propaganda. I don't have enough time to list all of them, just mention some which are still popular, like that Russia could not be defeated because it's a huge country with nuclear weapon. But then let me ask you what to do with the case of Vietnam, for example, or with the Soviet Afghan campaign, which became the catalyzer of the Soviet Union collapse. Another myth is that Ukraine has no identity. It's just a part of so-called Russian world or Russian Orthodox Christian civilization, something like this. But here you have to check the history and to have a view on the past. And just to mention the fact that Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, is 5 centuries older than Moscow. For example, there are many myths like Ukrainians misled by nationalists and even Nazis who are the leaders of our country today, which is actually nonsense because Ukraine is well known as a tolerant country. We do not have Nazis ideology. And what about nationalism? I do not understand why it was good for India and why it is bad for Ukraine. Yes, we are nationalists and we are struggling for our independent and for our nation to survive. And finally, one of the popular myths, especially in India, is that Russia is a privileged and trusted partner of India for so long time since the Soviet period, and that's why it could not be abandoned. But sorry to say, Russia is not the Soviet Union. And during this golden age of India-Soviet friendship, Ukraine was also a part of this friendly relationship, and actually almost 70% of the support which came from the Soviet Union to India those times came exactly from Ukraine. And there are many examples of this collaboration, like in the construction of the metallurgy factories or the establishment of famous IIT Bombay, which became now the well-known brand of Indian education, created by the professionals from Ukraine, from Odessa Polytechnic University. So to conclude, Ukraine is the first nation wants peace, but not at any cost. And we definitely don't want to give up, and we never recognize the temporarily occupied territories of our 4 regions, as well as Crimea. And it is not only about the territories, it is about the people who live there. We will never forgive Putin's regime, and we will insist on justice and punishment for all the crimes committed by him, like the death of our civilians, tortures of our prisoners, and especially for stolen Ukrainian children. We believe that this war is not an isolated issue, and after 1,000 days of this full-scale invasion, we believe independent, sovereign, democratic, and strong Ukraine is in the interest of the security of the whole world, food security. Also, we will discuss it later, and Ukraine needs understanding. Ukraine needs friends and partners, not only in the West, as many believe, but in the global South, and we are actually have very good friendly relationship with many nations in Asia and Africa. So I hope for your intention to know more about Russia-Ukraine war and its consequences. And I wish our webinar today all the success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Olena, for your very brief and very essential remarks, for your frame for our future discussion. I just want to remind you that the 3 institutions took part in organizing this event. I'm very thankful for the National Institute for Strategic Studies for the initiative. And also I'm very thankful to the East European Development Institute for help, also for the great contribution to this event. As far as I told you before, firstly, we will listen to Ukrainian speakers and then come to Indian questions, Indian partners. Now I give a word to Dr. Mykola Kapitonenko, the associate professor from the Institute of International Relations of Kyiv National Taras Shevchenko University. He will talk about the Russian-Ukrainian war, roots and impact on the international order. Dr. Mykola, please.
Thank you, Julia, and it's a pleasure for me to talk to such an audience about the Russian-Ukrainian war, a topic which remains in focus for almost 3 years already. In my remarks, I will concentrate on three key questions: why Russia invaded, what are the geopolitical consequences of the war so far, and the way the war can be brought to an end in one way or another. I would also say in the beginning that my take is a little bit different from the one presented by Olena, and it's based on pragmatism. I believe that the pragmatic perspective and understanding of the war from a more pragmatic perspective is essential, because Ukraine's dialogue with the world should over time become more and more based on pragmatic calculations, apart with being based on emotions. From a pragmatic perspective, this war is a problem because it imposes high price on many actors besides Russia and Ukraine. The Russian decision to invade has been a risky one, and it is a costly one, but there are a number of other countries which are also paying the huge price for this war, and that is why putting an end to it is a common task. Speaking about the roots and how the war can be explained, it's always a tricky question because wars are rare in modern world, and they are like gambling. When you are entering a war, when you make a choice to start a war, you always face some chances to lose, even if you have a huge advantage in terms of power, military capabilities, just like Russia did over Ukraine in the beginning of 2022. That's why it is a puzzle to try to understand the strategic logic behind the decisions of Moscow to annex Crimea in 2014 or to invade Ukraine in 2022. My experience in recent 2.5 years of generalizing about the war has pushed me towards the conclusions that there are three general frameworks within which the war can be explained. One of them is on the level of decision making, which is about how decisions have been taken in Kremlin, and personally how they have been taken by the Russian president. I believe that the prospect theory is explaining the way that decisions have been taken quite good. The problem is that I think that the Russian leadership have realized that the war is about to be a very risky decision, just the way they have been realizing that annexing Crimea in 2014 was also a very risky decision with a high level of uncertainty. But nevertheless, that decision has been taken because Putin has perceived himself as being in the so-called realm of losses. That means that the continuation of the situation they had on Ukraine before 2022 generated high probability of a strategic loss for Moscow. In order to break that trend, a decision to invade has been taken. I don't know how much probability the Russians have been attributed to possible victory or defeat, but in all cases that has been risky, and that has to do with the way Putin is perceiving international politics per se. The second framework is about the security dilemma, the perceived security dilemma, which is about Ukraine becoming pro-Western in one way or another, which was seen as a strategic threat by Moscow. It was not only about possible NATO membership, but it was also about general cooperation closeness between Ukraine and the West, and that what Putin has been concentrated on. In my view, that was driving Russia's decision during the period in between 2014 and 2022, when the fundamental task was not so much to bring Ukraine back into the Russian sphere of influence, but rather to dramatically weaken Ukraine. And the beginning of the war is the continuation of the same strategy. And the third framework within which the war can be explained is the more global context, which brings us to the power transition processes, which are currently underway. With the rise of China and generally the rise of the developing countries in the world, the global power is being shifted. And that is always a quite dangerous moment for any international system, because the risk of regional conflict. I'm sorry.
Lilia, please mute your microphone, or I would ask Dr. Mridula Ghosh to mute it.
So within the general global context, the power transition periods are especially dangerous in terms of they are maximizing the risk of regional clashes and regional conflicts. And in this way, the Russian-Ukrainian war is seen as a part of huge global shifts in power. In my view, these are three frameworks which might be quite helpful in explaining the logic of the war and the logic of decision-making in Kremlin. In what concerns geopolitical consequences, this is too early to say, because we need to wait and see how this war actually ends, and that will be a decisive moment. What we can see so far is, first of all, the weakening of international institutions, norms, and regimes, which means the weakening of the international order in general. We are currently in a transitional period from one international order to another, and we still don't know what kind of order that will be. The second consequence is that we have so far been witnessing the weakness of the West. The West has proved to be much less powerful than it seemed before 2022. It is evidently unable to reach the political results or the result on the battlefield. It is willing. Not enough resources, not even enough resolve or any other explanations can be brought in. But in any case, the West proved to be weaker. And that has certainly strategic consequences for the countries, the so-called countries in between, or neutral countries, or any countries which are drafting their foreign policy strategies. And they are now facing a dilemma, which side to choose, to put it shortly. That is also a geopolitical consequence of the war. And the third one, among the most important consequences, is the weakening of the non-proliferation regime. With the nuclear rhetoric being applied, there is a growing danger that countries in such a dangerous phase like this one will be much more willing to obtain nuclear weapons to secure their survival and their hard security. And also shortly about how the war might end. I'm a skeptic for all these years, and I think that we are in the middle of a pretty tough conflict to resolve or to manage, because of a number of reasons. In not least because of a territorial component. This is a territorial conflict, and these conflicts prove to be very difficult to resolve. There is a very bad record of managing those conflicts. Because of that, I think that certainly Ukraine is critically dependent on external support and supplies of weapons and money. And actually, its fate depends on decisions which will be taken in Washington or in Brussels and Berlin, in Paris and London, and in other capitals. But for me, the most likely scenario of this war is a long-term protracted conflict. It can be frozen at some point in one way or another. And with the election of Donald Trump as the new American president, the probability of this scenario is on the rise. Currently, people in Ukraine are discussing possible peace plan put forward by the future Trump administration, how it can look like, how it can be implemented. I think that there are some chances of war being frozen in the next year. But nevertheless, it will be very difficult to find any agreement or any solution to the conflict, even if Trump presses for it. Not only the United States, not only directly Ukraine and Russia, but also Europe and China and India and a number of other regional powers are having their stakes in this war. And it will be very difficult to balance them or to find a solution which will be in any way acceptable for all. I probably will stop here and will be happy to participate in the discussion.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Actually, it will discussive question whether the conflict really has some pragmatic and rational essence, and I hope we'll touch it in the discussion, because up to me it's totally irrational war. I will try to explain it later, and using this possibility to make a comment now, to use my right of moderator, I want to ask one question, just maybe as a rhetoric question to our Indian partners, about the post-colonial perspective of the war. It's not a secret that India and Ukraine, as well as Ukraine, are the post-colonial states, countries, and India really fought hard to get rid of colonial heritage, and India has this sentiment now for its national identity, for support its national identity. India wanted the whole world to support its fight for freedom in the previous century. And I'm very curious why India is blind to Ukraine sentiments, to esteem its own identity, to fight for being independent, for be freedom, for right to be independent and sovereign state. I will leave it now. I hope we will touch it at the discussion. And now it's time to discuss the food security issue. Dr. Ivan Us, also from the Institute for Strategic Studies, will talk about preservation of Ukraine's role in world food trade in conditions of full-scale war. Dr. Ivan, please, stage is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Yulia. Greetings for all colleagues present in there. Now I would like to touch a little bit topic of economy, because, if we a little bit return, even not to 2022, but to 2020, when at the end of February, at the beginning of March, the COVID starts, and the world trade appeared in shock of this COVID, and actually closer to February 2022, practically this problem was solved, but appeared another problem more serious as for me, as Russia started full-scale war against Ukraine. Yes, we live in war since 2014, but that war is not so seriously influenced. Global trade chains and other parameters of economy. But after Russia full-scale invasion, a lot of problems actually arise. First of all, presence of Ukraine in the global market, as Ukraine was one of the main suppliers of a lot of agriculture, first of all, goods. And the first months of war, Ukraine that lost opportunity to use the northern Actually, direction of our export as Belarus, who situated to the north, was Russia ally. Of course, east as Russia situated there. And the main problem was losing a south direction. It's a Black Sea, because the main routes of our export moves through the actually Black Sea area. And immediately Ukraine start talks how to return to the global trade, because it was shock not only for Ukraine, but for countries who are buying products from Ukraine, first of all, in Africa, in Asia, of course. And for Ukraine was two main tasks. First, to actually return to that market, and second, to preserve property rights. Because Russia start to say, okay, we now conquered some part of Ukraine, so probably we will give this product to other world, but it means violation of property right. And of course, it was not correct to give to Russia a chance to sell stealing Ukrainian products, actually. Finally, closer to July 2022, thanks to our partners, Ukraine succeed to return to the global trade, thanks to the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Of course, before that was a step from the European Union. European Union at May 2022 opened their borders to Ukrainian products, and Ukraine received a chance to use the Western direction through the European Union just to sell more goods to our partners, not only in Europe, but all over the world. But the Black Sea Grain Initiative, of course, was more serious, as Ukraine received a chance to sell a lot of products, and that initiative really played a big role. It exists for 1 year. In July 2023, Russia understands that it gives us not as much money as, of course, Ukraine expected, but enough for our economy, and Russia decided to stop it. Nevertheless, we use this year just for preservation of our position. Actually, when the first year for finished 2022 in foreign economy area, we start to calculate how it influenced on our trade parameters and and the most interesting thing that I made comparison between Ukraine and three other countries which faced with a big war, namely Sudan, Libya, and Syria, and Ukraine lost 29.2% of our turnover, compared to Sudan that lost 20.9, and Libya 43%. As for Syria's situation was seriously much harder. They lost in the first year of full-scale war 58.6, or practically 60% of Syrian turnover was lost. Nevertheless, Ukraine preserved its position in 2022, but in 2023, two other problems appear. First, that European countries neighboring to Ukraine understand that Ukraine winning competition in their markets. That's why we receive problems with our neighbors that sometimes exist even now. And the second moment, of course, was Russia's decision to stop Black Sea Grain Initiative, because Russia was sure that Ukraine could not organize its export without that initiative. But ironically, that problem exists approximately till October, November 2023, as a year ago. Ukraine built so-called alternative corridor, and that corridor really helped to us to return to trade. Furthermore, approximately at the April or May of 2024, our volume of our export of food products was even higher compared to period of Black Sea Grain Initiative. And that helped to Ukraine to preserve the serious position in the world. Now I want to mention just several products where Ukraine still the big player at the world. First of all, it's of course sunflower oil, and with thanks to Indian partner who buying a lot of sunflower oil from Ukraine, with thanks to a lot of companies that still have good relationship with Ukraine, and representatives of India who are working in Ukrainian companies and help to organize that export. Ukraine is a leader in the global export of sunflower oil, approximately 25% at the end of 2023 is Ukrainian share. We will see see what will be at the end of current year, but I don't think that we lost this position more serious. As for other products important, for example, it's rapeseed. Ukraine is the third country at the world in this position. About corn, Ukraine is the fourth country, and corn is even for Ukraine more important compared to wheat, where we actually only sixth country, but everyone like to talk about wheat. But as for corn, it's so important, and I think that it's even, as I said, for Ukraine, gives them more money, and that helped to us to exist in current reality. And what is more important, returning to the start of my speech about the wars, that this product still at the global market, because we understand that globalization led to a situation when a problem in any country that played big role in the global market led to problem to whole world. Everyone should understand that. That's why actually we support positions that there should not be wars in our planet, because it's a problem for everyone. As the global trade touches everyone, so war in any country touches everyone. So that's why Ukraine, as I said, preserves its position in the trade. And now the question still remains, just first of all, to organize security of our potential to sell products through the Black Sea. Russia still has a lot of military ships in the Black Sea, and that is a problem for global food security. I think that from this point of view, Russia creates problem. Actually, Russia like to say that they need global hunger, because in case of global hunger, people from all over the world will ask Russia to do something for them, to help them. And that's why really Russia interested in that, and I think that our partners understand that, and that's why actually was an interesting situation when it was a forum between Russia and Africa, and African countries said that we don't need some steps from Russia beyond the step give to Ukraine chance to sell this product, because we don't need problems with prices that appeared after Russia started war. So that's why I think that security of Black Sea should be tasked not only for Ukraine, it should be tasked for whole world, and only that step can help to preserve Ukrainian presence in the trade of the food products, and so will not create additional danger to the global hunger. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ivan Us. And the last speaker, very valuable speaker for us, because it's Dr. Mridula Ghosh, who is kind of mediator between Ukrainians and Indians, because she's Indian, living in Ukraine for a long time. She understands the situation from inside, and that's why her perspective is very important for us, and I hope for our Indian partners as well. So Dr. Mridula Ghosh, who is the board chair of East European Development Institute, who is also the associate professor at National University of Kyiv Mohyla Academy, will talk about the impact of the war on Ukraine development priorities. Please, Dr. Mridula Ghosh.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Yulia Phil, for giving me the floor. And thank you all the honorable speakers who have made already a lot of good inputs. And I would try to match all of you. So my humble words will be centering around certain concrete topics. The concrete topics will be the impact of the war, and I will look at it from the development perspective, which is what I will have a sort of, little bit of an economic data and also development data. It's difficult to talk about development and reconstruction when, unfortunately, myself, including all my colleagues, we had consecutive 3 or 4 nights without sleep, constant drone attacks, and then we had a massive missile attack today morning. Almost the whole of the country was under alert since early morning. So it's very difficult to understand how to talk and position Ukraine in terms of reconstruction, what to reconstruct when everything every day is liable to get destroyed. It is on the verge of destruction. We never know what is going to happen to all of us. And this is a very precarious situation. However, the data shows that Ukraine is resilient, not only by its people, not only by the efforts of people, the brave people who are fighting in the front, giving their lives and leaving everything. I mean, they are spending, the human loss is the biggest. However, the economic parameters of this country is still alive, and it is kicking, as we say. I would say first, I would start anyway, the impact of the war. The first is human beings. That's the human dimension. Number of deaths is an item which will raise a lot of speculations, because if the journal Time will say that 100,000 was the death, I mean the death of the military. Then Economist Journal comes up with 70,000. However, President Zelensky made an official figure, which was 31,000. We are yet to understand the real scale of this huge problem. Civilian deaths is the Achilles' heel, because civilian deaths we will not be able to count, because civilians are everywhere in the occupied territories, and any moment anything is happening to anyone. However, the civilian deaths, according to official estimates, stand at 11,673, while the United Nations mentions it at the level of 10,191. But remember, only in Mariupol, at the start of the war, we heard estimates from 8,000 to 20,000. So it's hard to imagine what is happening in the occupied territories. This is the scale of the war is extremely brutal. It is genocidal, because it is, as Dr. Olena Bordilovska said, it is having the intention of destroying a country and a nation. I would turn my attention now, apart from the human loss, because this is what will affect the labor market. This is able-bodied, working age individuals, male population is getting decimated, is getting killed or, getting injured. So we will have a trauma of this generation. What Europe suffered, during the Second World War. I mean, we know that Russia may face the same thing, but, they don't care about their people in that way. So Ukraine cares about its people. So this is a very serious topic that is discussed, impact of war on people. This will affect the labor market. There will be a very big demographic change also, because a lot of people have left. It's UNHCR estimates it's more than 6 million people, 6.5, little bit less than that. And also 1.2 million in 2022, they were sort of like removed to Russia and Belarus. But we are not including the 19,000 so far children that were kidnapped and taken to Russia, and many more individuals who have disappeared. There was a lot of disappearances of individuals which are yet not recorded by human rights organizations. So the scale of demographic catastrophe is going to be studied and analyzed, but right now we are in the middle of it. It's like in the boiling pot. Despite this, I would say that the GDP, is a very, very important indicator. And I would say that there was a almost 30% reduction in 2022 on the onslaught of the invasion. But after that, 2023, the Statistics Committee reports even of an increase, because production is going on. People are going to their jobs. People are working. Everything is running. This is not a country which is dead. So this is what is very important to ascertain when we think of any reconstruction, the spirit of resilience and the core of, the spirit of the people that makes a country turn around and become a winner in war. A winner in war is a very different connotation. If we look at it from different angles, especially from the human development angle, it has a very important implication. With aid has also come. You will hear everywhere a lot of speculation that Ukraine is surviving on aid. Yes, a lot of aid is received. I mean, not military aid. This is aid given to Ukraine, which is the standard development aid, which has increased, which is if Ukraine also spent on war, we have to think that Ukraine spent almost 40% of its GDP in 2023. So it's about some 2,649 trillion hryvnia in Ukrainian currency. It is almost today 1/3 of the GDP of the country is being spent on war. Now, the international aid that has been received is also staggering, which is 42.5 billion, and main countries had been the EU, 19.5. Next comes the US, 10.95, then IMF, 4.5, Japan, 3.6, Canada, 1.7, and the UK, 998 million. And the World Bank is 660 million. So with this estimate, if we look at the development aid, that the development aid is coming from very serious, committed organizations. You will hear that Ukraine is losing the war. It is nothing. But I want to show you that this is the opposite, because donors will not aid a country if the country is not going to function. So this is telling a different story. The figures speak different. Despite losses and per capita aid, if we measure, these big countries with big GDP, they have a bigger share. But if you measure per capita aid from countries coming is Estonia, the small countries, they helped a lot, which is the Baltic countries and the Nordic. That is Estonia, Denmark, Norway, Lithuania, and Latvia. They stand in the first list when you think of giving aid per capita to Ukraine, which is a very, very important indicator. I also want to say that there is this very important export-import balance, which is also important when you ascertain its economy running. If we say that it is getting a 5% growth, and even this year we are having, like in the budget, the development aid is not 40, above 40, which was initially estimated. It stands at 37 something, the expected aid that is coming in this year, the current year. If we think of the export potential of Ukraine, yes, it has, and my previous speakers already mentioned the potential in certain sectors. Now, today, Poland, Romania, and China has been, the places where Ukraine exported in this year, 2023, the current year. So this is very important to note that if almost, 60, like 2.4 billion was exported to China. And despite all, like when we say of pragmatism, like there are companies which are doing business. Well, I would like to also state that doing this business in terribly harsh circumstances is also something that must be taken into account. But it should not be taken for granted that Ukraine will continue to bleed and then come and welcome everyone that comes for an opportunity, because Ukraine has the right to choose, because once it gets out of the war, it will have to choose its partners, and it will make very serious political choices. One of the choices, of course, the European integration, which has been there in the constitution of Ukraine today, and the European Union has been the biggest partner, and I believe that this will continue. This line will continue. With the US, we shall see what happens after Donald Trump is the president, but also outstanding commitments will continue to be honored. The same thing goes for India. In India's case, it is a little bit like a tricky issue, because on one hand, we see neutrality. On one hand, we see the political stuff going on. That is, will India become a mediator and sort of stuff coming up? But at the same time, we have Indian organizations, businesses trying to say that, yes, we are positive. A lot of humanitarian aid was also given, some 16 consignments, and more are coming through. Private donations have also reached. And of course, Indian private businesses, to my mind, if they cooperate with the Ukraine facility program, which is the European Union program for reconstruction, that is the best way to be in the aid consortium, because it will not be one country, two country aid. It will be a group of countries aiding Ukraine to come out of this mess. So therefore, I believe there is no alternative not to go, in tandem, or at least to cooperate and collaborate, or if even necessary to be part of the Ukraine Facility Initiative. In what way, I cannot say it now. But I believe that there are certain preconditions. With mentioning these, I will finish. That is, there are certain issues that we need to pay attention. The level of prices and tariffs is very important. That many people, there's a sociological survey made by the Razunkov Center, a very top think tank here. They made an estimate that the situation might worsen after the war ends is up to 86%. Think that, yes, the level of prices and tariffs will have a big havoc. The economic condition of the country will be very important to ascertain the overall economic condition. 68% of people think that way. Level of stability, 64.5% think that this is also another criteria. And the last three are, the confidence in future, to be sure what is going to happen tomorrow. Like today, nobody in Ukraine can say what's going to happen tomorrow. This is a very sad thing. So this is something also to be a predictable, sustainable future. Now, the other thing is the family welfare, the family well-being. And of course, the very important component is the internal component, that is relationship with the people, with the powers that be, that is the authorities and people. That is a totally internal affair of Ukraine. But however, this will shape and take Ukrainian democracy as it has been the democratic country in this part of the world. You can see apart from the Baltics, you can see the rest of the post-Soviet republics, they hardly had this kind of a democracy which Ukraine has. And the civil society of Ukraine is very powerful. I would say even more powerful than many East European countries. So with this, I would end and I would welcome questions if possible. Thank you so much for giving me the word.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Mridula. I just mentioned that Lala Aliyeva from Baku, from Azerbaijan, greets us in chat. And also we are very glad to see Sumit Pathak from Bihar University here with us. And now we are coming to Q&A question, and I want to introduce you. The Samratha Shetty, the Chief Operating Officer from Synergia Foundation, postgraduate from Greenwich, UK. And also other participants, Ritika Simon, Research Director also from Synergia Foundation, and Suchitra Padmanabhan, both participants, postgraduates from London School of Economics. Samratha, maybe you will take the introductory notes and then we will start answering your questions. Microphone is muted. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all the participants who have shared your insights on the Ukraine-Russia war perspectives. And I know this war is challenging global politics in a profound ways. And as you rightly said, it's not just a regional conflict, it's affecting alliances, security, economies around the world. And this war has led to countries to rethink their defense strategy, strengthen partnership like NATO, and explore new ways to become energy dependent. This disruption in key supplies, especially in energy and food, shows how connected and dependent nations are on each other for stability. And Ukraine has been long recognized as a critical player in the global food trade and often referred to as the breadbasket of Europe. And my question is to Dr. Ivan. The ongoing conflict has not only disrupted production and export routes, but also has impacted food security globally. And as nations face rising food prices and supply chain constraints, preserving Ukraine's role in world food trade is crucial, especially for countries that rely on its grain. I came across the statistics from the Foreign Agriculture Service, FAS, projects notably decrease in Ukraine's grain exports from 2023 to 2024, which shows that corn exports are expected to drop by 38%, wheat by 18%, barley by 19%. And these reductions are directly attributed to the ongoing conflict's impact on production and logistics. Another report that I read from the Kyiv School of Economics estimates that Ukraine's agricultural sector could face indirect losses up to $83 billion by the end of 2025. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Factors contributing these losses include reduced harvest, disrupted exports, increased production costs, and the necessity to rehabilitate agricultural land affected by the war. Now, my question is, how are Ukrainian farmers and agricultural businesses adapting to resource shortage? And are there any specific resources or technology that international partners like India can provide to aid production stability?
Dr. Ivan.
Really, okay. Really, for Ukraine, it was a big problem to preserve our position at the agricultural trade. And thanks to partner ours, thanks to India and other countries who really pressed on Russia to give a green light to opportunity of Ukraine to sell our agriculture products through the Black Sea, because we understand that Europe, of course, helped us, but logistic of Ukrainian export have never been oriented on the European Union countries. That's why it's created some problems in these countries in 2023. And now situation little bit stabilized. I could not say that absolutely. We're still exporting less products than even in January 2022. But nevertheless, some thanks to work of this alternative corridor, thanks to probably some deals between our partners and Russia, that there is no attacks from Russian rockets on the ships that moving with Ukrainian grain, and not only grain, with other products, actually even not agriculture now, to other countries. So we still on the market, but ironically, one of the main problems that exists for Ukraine in 2024, it's decreasing global prices. So if you look at the prices for main Ukrainian products, namely sunflower oil, for corn, for wheat, it decreased. And that's why Ukraine now, after 9 months of this year, so 3 quarters, we exported in physical volumes more than 37% compared to previous year. But in money, we received only at 13% more. So the difference mainly based on decreasing of global prices, and that's creates a problem. But I couldn't say that war influence that. War influence on the increase of prices at its began. Now the situation is for me a little bit stabilized, but no one needs, of course, shocks that appeared in the first half of 2022 when it was an enormous growth of these prices. Nevertheless, those corridors works, and it means that our partners, they still should make some pressure probably on Russia, not to stop these processes. And as I said in my speech, of course, there should be control for Russia for not stealing agriculture products, because Russia said that it helps not to increase risks for the global hunger, but on the other hand, it creates risk for property rights. Our world need property rights. In other connection, it will be big house. So that's why I think that this pressure should remain, and India and other countries that can say something to Russia, and Russia will listen to you, because Russia listen not to any country in this world. Of course, should constantly say to them that first of all, war is bad and Russia should stop it. But in this trade area, that Russia should not stop Ukraine in selling its agriculture, and not only agriculture products. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. More questions?
Yeah, if I can go ahead. I think my question is to Dr. Mykola. I think in your session, you had mentioned that the conflict is reshaping global alliances, and there's a change there's a international balance of power that is being shifted right now. So what lessons can you draw from a conflict like this for future prevention and just conflict prevention on a whole?
Well, thank you very much for this difficult question. Generally speaking, international community is very bad in preventing conflicts or managing them. And not very much can be done about that because if we hope for international norms and regimes and international law in general to do the job, it usually does not work because, as we see, when great powers um, emphasize their security considerations or their power aspirations or anything like this, if they see some things as vital for them, if they are ready to fight, they are ready to go for a war, then international community can do very little about that. There basically are two general models of providing international security. One of them is based on the correct measuring of balance of power, and that is the basis. That is how European or international diplomacy was functioning back in 18th or 19th centuries. When great powers have been balancing each other, they have been struggling for spheres of influence, and they were somehow through diplomacy avoiding large-scale wars among them. This is a realistic approach, which is highly unpopular now in Ukraine because we consider this approach as being ignoring lots of important things like values or other things attached. But this is it can be quite effective if managed correctly. An alternative approach is based on international norms. If we build institutions, if we build multilateral trust, if countries do not fear each other, but they trust each other, that was a period which was present in international politics right after the Cold War. Then it can be functional, but that requires strong institutions, that requires, common values, that requires common norms, and that requires some level of satisfaction by all by the existing international order. That can be working for some time, but at some point, some states are developing quicker than others, and the balance of power is shifting. And it turns out that there are states which are revisionist, which are ready to take the risk, as Russia did in 2014 or 2022, or even early, if some goes back to Putin's famous speech at Munich Security Conference in 2007. There have been signals that Russia is going to revise international order. Now it has powerful allies like China, and that makes things much more problematic. So I think there is no universal formula of how violent conflicts can be prevented. It is always a matter of understanding the peculiarities of a specific historical moment. It is a matter of diplomatic skills, and it is a matter of understanding deeply of what different countries, different poles, different centers of power really want, and whether it is possible to find any solution which would be acceptable for all, as I have said in the beginning.
Thank you.
Hi,
Please.
my name is Suchitra. I have a question for Dr. Mridula. I thought you made a very impassioned speech about how the vulnerable sections have been impacted rather severely by the scale of this conflict. And I wanted to talk to you about this, about the problem of reconstruction, which you mentioned. How can we even potentially begin to manage the situation any better? I mean, it's really I suppose no surprise that vulnerable sections are affected even more deeply in the case of a conflict. The fact that we are dealt with conflict, so many multiple crises really, conflict, there's climate change, there's COVID-19, and all of this is just boomeranged back in our face in the face of a very politically charged atmosphere which you are facing in Ukraine. Is there something you think we can do in particular for this situation?
Well, if I talk about the vulnerable groups in terms of demography will be the elderly, whose number is already big. It was always big in proportionally. Pensioners and elderly constituted a bulk of the population in Ukraine because of the post-war legacy from the Second World War, because the birth rates were low, fertility rates were low in these countries, and this is valid for all of Europe. Male population is less, women population is more, which is also typical about any war economy or any war polity. I would think that demographically, one more biggest problem will be the injured people, people with trauma. There is a big number of, big section of people, children with trauma, women with trauma, and, we have at par with men, even women soldiers fighting. And they are people like journalists, people like, musicians, people like programmers. They are going to the front and fighting. And now we have a mobilization. So the post-war trauma will, of course, have a span of, let's say, some years. We have to cope with it. There should be a very serious social safety net and system, which we cannot ignore the human capital. We must protect the human beings that will be left after the war, who will be here, who will not flee to any other country, because there has been a flight of a lot of people. I do hope, coupled with this, we should have also the view that there should not be flight of capital. It will be capital, both human capital and money capital, so that the whole system of social support be restructured. In a way, it will not be possible for Ukraine to totally pay attention and restrict social spending, which is often the mantra for any economic revival. So social support system and social network has to be a very important component in this transition period to a big economic lift. Of course, together with it, this will support if we have investments coming in, if we have small and medium businesses coming up. Together with the post-war trauma, we need to engage people. Like most people in the health, education, and other sectors, they are extremely competent. And, the standards here are close to the European Union standards. They have harmonized all legislations and they are a candidate country. So it is at that level. Students have these facilities of academic mobility and professors and everyone. This is also an English-speaking country. This is already an English-speaking country. In the past 30 years, this has happened. So these are the fait accompli, which we must pay attention to. With this, I also believe the massive reconstruction of infrastructure. Now, that's a very different sector because we need the social sector definitely to protect the people, the existing capital, then increase investments to have economic growth and to have raise the standard of living of people. And also the reconstruction drive. Over there, of course, we will have, I think, the consortium that is going to be formed. I cannot just, guess and on the crystal ball gazing. We cannot do it till the war is on. So it will definitely, again, hinge on the Ukraine facility of the European Union. I do believe that that will be the cornerstone, around which many other initiatives will be revolving. So coming back to your point is the vulnerable groups. Saving them, to help them is also one of the very important strategy for Ukraine to be rebuilt. If it is okay. This is my answer. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Ajay. I'm also from Synergia Foundation. Unfortunately, I do not have an economics background like my other colleagues. I'm ex-military, so more of a security and geopolitics background. I have 2 points. Firstly, what Yulia, she raised the issue about India's moral stance towards the war in Ukraine in light of its history as a champion of colonials, countries which were occupied by colonial powers. Yes, I agree that as late as the early 2000s, India, as the leader of the non-aligned movement, and even as independence, has always, pushed for the freedom of countries which have been colonized. But the impression which the war between Ukraine and Russia, the kind of impression which has been generated in a wide segment of the intellectual and the policy and the academia in India is that Ukraine has become the playing ground for big power geopolitics. It's unfortunate, but that's what is the impression. And this geopolitics did not start in 2022. This whole game goes back not even at 2014, but it goes way beyond it till 2010, I would say, would be one of these markers when we saw the collapse of the Soviet Union, and certain assurances were given to the Soviet Union, which was collapsing and which was not in a position to negotiate, that since Warsaw Pact has been dismantled, NATO has no raison d'être to continue. But what we saw after 2010 was not only was the NATO being expanded, or it was being taken to the very boundaries of Russia. So there is an impression that it is not purely a war in the colonial or a new colonial sense, but more of a big game politics, geopolitics, power games, in which countries like Ukraine, unfortunate, but it has been trapped into it. So that was one point. So therefore, the impression of it being India not supporting, standing to its traditional role as a champion of those who are suffering under the colonialism or new colonialism, actually did not get much of traction within India. The second point I would like to mention is what Professor Mykola mentioned about pragmatic solutions to territorial conflicts. You see, while we are talking about reconstruction of Ukraine, we are talking about development aid, we are talking about private and public partnership in reconstruction. And I think we are putting the horse before the cart, because the fighting has to be stopped. And we have to be pragmatic that war has to be stopped in Ukraine before anything can move. And it's very, you ask us, we've got territorial disputes lasting almost 80 years with our neighbors. We have fought 3 wars with Pakistan, and we fought 1 war with China in which we were thrashed. And our territory still remains, huge chunks of our territory remains with China, and huge part of our territory remains with Pakistan. But with China, we have business as usual. Although with Pakistan, there is a resolution in a parliament that we will one day get that land back, which is in Jammu and Kashmir, occupied by Pakistan. But the fact remains that we took a call and we have decided to go on ahead with life and accept it in one way or the other, the simple statement of fact that we have lost territory. We were fortunate we could do this because the countries involved are not very, very superior militarily or economically to us. So we are not dependent on external forces to allow us this freedom that whether we want to make agreement with China or with Pakistan vis-a-vis the territory that we have lost or we are occupying. Whereas in case of Ukraine, with statements coming out by the president-elect that he's got a solution which can be put on the table in a day, but it involves certain concessions to be made by both sides. So I think we should be looking at what this involves. It's a very difficult solution, issue for you to consider, because you have to decide as to how much you are willing to lose and what impact it will have on your economy. How much is the occupied territory, which is under control of the Russians, is critical for your industry, for your agriculture, for the quality of life of your people and the human rights of your people. So it's a very difficult situation. I don't think today anybody has an answer. We admire the Ukrainian people for their stoicness, for the fighting war that have continued for the last 3 years. But I don't know if there are any solutions for peace unless concessions are made by both sides. Some losses, some gains, and like Professor Mykola said, a pragmatic solution would be the only thing. Then we can carry forward to the development and reconstruction. I think it's a very difficult situation we are in. We can only wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe someone from my colleagues will respond somehow. Dr. Olena. General, thank you for your remark and for the reaction.
I wouldn't mind telling a few, my 5 cents worth of comments, if possible. Yeah, the geopolitical thing happened because it's Ukraine is part of, East Europe. And if you see that the old story being repeated that, there will be no expansion of NATO or these things were very, very doubtful today. I mean, no sources can prove. It is only hearsay that floats around. And of course, Ukraine, until very recently, had in its constitution a neutral country, neutrality. It had it is in its constitution, which even we Indians, we don't have. Second, Ukraine gave up its third largest military nuclear arsenal, as you know it better than I do. So that was unique in the world. And to support that, there was the Budapest Memorandum signed by Britain, United States, and Russia. So it was Russia who violated it. So it is not that, because of the NATO expansion, Russia violated it. No, there was no NATO expansion. Thinking of NATO started, why didn't Russia attack Poland or the Baltic states? They joined, they are on the frontiers of Russia. Russia has very smooth borders. The most peaceful borders Russia has is with the Baltics. There was never a war after the Baltics gained independence. So therefore, it is very difficult for me to acknowledge the argument that, NATO expansion happened long before, even before the EU expanded. So all the East European countries, they didn't want to see tanks roll themselves in Prague in 1968, or even Hungary in 1956, or Warsaw, the martial law in 1980. So they had a previous experience of Russia always using its coercive force towards those countries dominating. So that was the reaction they had to have some kind of a security. That was the story of East Europe. The story of Ukraine was complete nuclear disarmament and neutrality. So what suddenly happened to Russia? It is Russia's policy of turning into a very colonial mindset, which started from the coming in power of President Putin, which started evolving slowly, that to control Ukraine and to gather all the territories. And so this was a strategy that was devised, that was, programmed, I would say, in Russia for military expansion. So this started happening. You see, there was an attack on Georgia in 2008. There was this Transnistria problem between Moldova and Ukraine. There is a strip where Russia keeps some of its army. Always they had created pockets of instability around former territories of the Soviet Union. So with Kazakhstan, they have also very difficult relationship. Going by history, even the recent, for the past 30 years of the history after Soviet Union fell apart, we can really see who committed the aggression, not the countries, not the members of the Soviet Union, it's Russia again. So, unfortunately, maybe you will not agree with me, but I would say that Russia's aggressive behavior is the reason why these countries are turning to some sort of an arrangement for getting security, because rearming itself and renuclearizing is not the option, because that will raise more voices in the world. So the Ukraine needs to have security guarantees. This is for certain, when the Budapest Memorandum was brutally violated. Thank you.
More remarks? Yes.
If I may?
Yes.
First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Mridula, for argumenting this issue, which is really very sensitive, and we know that a lot of, again, myths created by Russia itself about the war against NATO. But as I said in my introductory speech, Ukraine is fighting for itself, not for NATO. We are struggling for our independence, and it's a very difficult, very tough times right now. Yes, we got some support, but still without security insurances, it is very and very difficult. And Russia, actually, as is what said by Dr. Mridula, left no option for us. Actually, from the very beginning of the independence, we are like academicians, we had a lot of discussions what to do with the status of Ukraine. And in the first documents of the independent Ukraine, the first declaration, we proclaimed our wish to be neutral country. It was like this. But then what happened, as Dr. Mridula mentioned, in 2014, exactly in the time when we had this neutral status in our constitution, Russia annexed Crimea. It was the lesson which we have to understand and to take our own decision. Still, again, there is a myth that NATO was inviting Ukraine. Till now, as you know, it is a long process. And unfortunately for us, I would say, we had no invitation. No one invited us right now to join this alliance. But we continue our struggle because we have to survive. And that's why we don't need this frozen conflict. We don't need any decision in the middle. We have to win this war. And it is not easy. And that's why we are seeking for your understanding, at least. And also, as I think that we are going to sum up our today's event, I would like to tell you that we planned this conversation in two parts. The first one, which is today's part, is more theoretical. And we can see that it's a lot of things to discuss because it's a gap in information about Ukraine, and it is Ukrainian fault as well. We have to admit this because we did not provide enough information to our Indian colleagues in last 30 years. We tried to do it, but it was not enough, frankly. But the second part we will organize later, maybe at the end of November. It's up to our colleagues in Synergy. We will discuss it. Will be about the practical cooperation between Ukraine and India, because it's a lot which we mentioned today and which we could not mention because of the lack of time. It's not only agriculture or trade, it is also education, it is cooperation in military sphere, it's technology, where Ukraine and India had a lot of collaboration previously. But please do understand that we can't share with you many details in, for example, military cooperation. You should understand because we are at war now and we have to ask some permission for sharing these details, but still something could be discussed. And what we are planning right now, we will invite speakers from different fields who will share with you possibility for further collaboration between Ukraine and India. And I hope there will be an interest for such event as well. Thank you.
Yes, I see the Sumit Pathak's hand. Please, Sumit. We don't hear you.
Yeah. Hope I am audible. Okay.
Yes.
There's just some observation because thank you, Olena, because I have also read and worked little bit about the Ukraine. It is not about the data, it is not about the war. The world community has to understand that this is not the war or aggression against Ukraine. This is the war or aggression against humanity. World community has to understand. This is because today Ukraine, if Russia goes ahead, tomorrow will be some another country. So this is not only the war against Ukraine, this is the war against humanity, this is the crime against humanity and civilization. Ukraine is a civilization, so we have to understand it. Second, that in this 21st century, the issues cannot be settled on through a war or through force. There's a lot of another means are there, and India has always worked. India has always, witnessed and suffered uh, through a lot of war with China, war with Pakistan, and all that. So issues cannot be resolved. Even if any issues, it is the expansion of NATO and everything that might come through some tables, negotiation tables are there. So we can do also there. Third is that uh, power is everywhere. So just imposing the power. So this is another aspect that the naked power or the realism is not the reality of the modern world. There are other source of power, so that can be also used for that. And most important point is that war and negotiation cannot go together. First, the world community has to understand that yes, negotiation is possible. So they have to come out that. Later things, the economic aspect and other things, I cannot say that what data can anybody can gather during the war period. So point is that, and one of the most important aspect everyone has to understand, even Russia has to understand that that they can change everything, but they cannot change their neighbors. So nation has to understand that Ukraine is not Ukraine is a immediate neighbor and the neighbor forever. So that's the point is that I don't have any data, but it is the duty of the world community not to support Ukraine by military, rather than go and support the Ukraine. That it is not the problem of Ukraine only. This is the problem of the whole world. This is the problem of the humanity. This is the problem of the civilization. So my observation is simple. This is not only the war against Ukraine. This is the war against the humanity. This is the war against civilization. So that we have to think in a broader perspective rather than it is between the narrow perspective of the Ukrainian war. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumit. We feel the same here in Ukraine because it's kind of existential threat, not only to us and not only to Baltic states. Russia's economy and Russia's kind of state building now is based on the war, and this state will will not be able to exist without a war. This regime will not be able to exist without a war. If the war will be frozen here, the war will come somewhere else. I'm sorry, in Kazakhstan, in Caucasus. I don't know. So thank you for your very valuable remark, and I also please can I respond to Mr. General remark about the lack of Ukraine's subjectivity, kind of. I agree with you, right? Unfortunately, we are dependent now on the foreign aid. We are not very subjective in this situation, and it's our fault. It's the fault of Ukraine. But we are, as well as India, we are the nation in making. We still have some post-colonial syndrome. We are seeking for our identity, and all these 33 years we are improving in it. It's a long process. Unfortunately, I think it's impossible to do it in one moment, to become a very strong nation, subjective nation. So I don't deny our fault, but at the same time, I understand that it's natural, and it shouldn't be the reason to deny our identity and to deny our rights to be on this earth, yes, to have this land, to live on our own land. This is my remark, and yeah, if Indian side have some questions, more questions, please. If not, I will like ask our Ukrainian participants also make comments. No, you don't have any more questions, right? Maybe someone who wrote, texted some comments in chat would like to make some short speech. Yanina, please, maybe you. Also, I'm very glad that Lyudmila Filipovich from the Institute of Philosophy of Ukraine also here with us.
Hello to everyone. Yes,
Hello.
nice to meet you. It's very nice webinar and very nice thoughts today I heard. And I also want to say that it's very, this war, it's not about war in Ukraine. It's a very global question because we have war between democracy world and dictators world. And very important to win in this war for humanity and for peace in the whole world. It's my opinion. Because I'm a journalist and I make a lot of media analysis, and I can say that not only about Ukraine.
Yeah, true. Unfortunately.
And very good communication between Ukraine and India is very important on this way to it will help to win in this war and very helpful for peace in the world.
Thank you, Yanina. More comments? If not, I also will say a few words more. Just to proceed with the topic about rationality or irrationality of this war. From our perspective here, Russia is waging suicidal war. We don't know whether we will exist tomorrow, but we know for sure that Russia will degrade. I'm sorry, I have to say this truth now, because with such a sanctions, with such a mode of economy now, which is war economy, with the fuel factor, with the possible low down of the prices for rope, for fuels, Russia's economy will be dead one day or another. So the question is, what is the ratio of Putin's actions here? It looks like the ratio of suicidal person. It is my point, my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Yulia, and all the participants here. If there is any way we as a think tank from India, if we can help collaborate, we're happy to do so. And like Yulia mentioned, we're happy to have another roundtable late this November or early December. Please feel free to get in touch with us, and in any way possible, if we can contribute, we're more than happy. The whole team is more than happy to be a part of this.
Thank you very much. Samratha. And we do hope for the second practical panel. We will try to make it mutually beneficial, to make it useful for you as well. Thank you for your time. Thanks everybody for coming today. We are hoping for the further cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
See you.
See you.
Thank you very much. We will wait for next webinars.
Yeah, I think Dr. Kapitonenko wanted to speak. He asked for, he raised his hand, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Yeah. We don't hear you.
Yeah, he's not there. Well, on
I
behalf of one of the organizers, I would like to just, do you hear me? Yes?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, on behalf of one of the co-organizers, I would like to thank Dr. Yulia Field for this interesting and very nice moderation, and also like to say that the Institute for Oriental Studies of the National Academy of Sciences is our partner, which Yulia herself represents. And thanks to the National Institute for Strategic Studies, and of course to our colleagues from the Synergia Foundation. We look forward to future events. And of course, our humble institution, East European Development Institute, and this sort of we have a project called Ukraine and South Asia Open Dialogues. We are holding Zoom seminars every month, almost alternately. So please, you're most welcome to join us for any future events or future cooperation. Thank you all so much. This is only little my wish from our side. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Milagos. Thank you for your help in organizing it and for your support. Yeah, I guess time to finish, right? Thank you very much. Bye. Bye. Have a nice day, everybody.